media proclamation threatening to withhold federal funding from educational institutions permitting illegal protests, deport foreign student participants, and ban masks during demonstrations has ignited a firestorm of legal and ethical debates. This policy, framed as a response to pro-Palestinian protests and alleged anti-Semitism on campuses, intersects with constitutional protections.
Yeah, this is problematic, is that's Perplexity AI sourced through all your favorite trusted sources. That is the problem. This is what we saw, Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk and basically everyone who shills for Donald Trump and MAGA without any principle at this point. They were retweeting and amplifying a message from Truth Social. Donald Trump said all federal funding will stop for any school, college, or university that allows illegal protests. Agitators will be imprisoned or permanently sent back to the country from which they came. American students will be permanently expelled or, depending on the crime, arrested. No masks. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Immigration enforcement, public health concerns, and the role of federal oversight in higher education. Legal experts and civil liberties organizations warn that the measures risk violating First Amendment rights, enabling discriminatory enforcement, and destabilizing academic institutions reliant on federal funding.
I don't care about destabilizing these institutions. I do care about the First Amendment, though. Because if you trample on theirs, I don't care who it is. It could be somebody I don't even agree with. It doesn't matter. Then that means you will trample on mine.
Constitutional challenges to the illegal protests. The cornerstone of this controversy lies in the First Amendment, which safeguards freedom of speech and assembly. Public colleges and universities, as state entities, are bound by constitutional protections that prohibit viewpoint-based restrictions on protests. While institutions may impose time, place, and manner regulations, such as prohibiting overnight encampments or amplified sound after certain hours, these rules must apply uniformly across all demonstrations, regardless of their political messaging. Trump's policy, however, explicitly targets protests deemed illegal without clarifying what constitutes such activity beyond existing legal frameworks.
It's pretty important to call something illegal, and there's no clarification. We have no idea what you're talking about. What makes the protest illegal? They're talking about, remember, this is about private campuses, how this whole thing bubbled up through Elise Stefanik. Elise Stefanik, when I saw that, I was really upset about it here. And Elise Stefanik was the one who was the face of all of this. That was the whole Harvard University. What was it? I forget if was it Penn State, I believe, or Pennsylvania University. I forget which one there. These private schools got dragged up in front of Congress, and this is what they were talking about. Now we have the power of MAGA. The whole power of MAGA, the whole power of all Zionists. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you are, a Zionist is perfectly fine with this. She was at one point a representative. Now she's been nominated. I don't know if she's been confirmed or if she has to be confirmed. Yeah, she has to be confirmed for a United States ambassador to the UN, just the same position that Nikki Heels Up Haley had. So she takes money from AIPAC, has no constitutional authority to tell the president of private institutions how to enforce their policies. She brought them in front of the Congress and said, well, they can't be saying these anti-Semitic things. What do you mean they can't be saying? You're labeling things anti-Semitic. Who says what's anti-Semitic or not? There's no consensus on that. That's not illegal in the first place. And we're a private university. What's going on here? But that's exactly what's happening. First Amendment violation. Now it's backed by the teeth of Donald Trump. I went back and forth with people I respect on this, highly disagree. Warren Redlick, who I like. I was on the show way back, like 4 years ago now. Great guy, Tesla World. He says he disagrees on the constitutional issue. I think he's a former lawyer. With my lawyer hat on, I don't know if he's a former lawyer or not, but he ran for office. You're not making sense. What's not making sense? How does the government tell a private organization what's anti-Semitic or not? I don't even understand why we're even arguing this. Somebody said here's I'm just going to show you the other side of the argument. People will say nobody enforced anything on Harvard. They could and they do enforce DEI, which is illegal. I never said I supported DEI. I never said DEI was legal. So what does that have to do with my take? Gay said, remember I forgot her first name already, but Gay, the black, another bald headed black, said that she said, and nobody in the government did anything but expose it and criticize it. That is putting pressure on a private. Why is the government saying anything about the free speech of a private institution? They shouldn't be saying anything. Of course, they're exposing it. Why? To put pressure on it. And now we fast forward. This was January of last year. Now we fast forward. She was fired and all that happened. And I said, bringing in the president of a private organization and telling them how to apply their own code of conduct under the threat of legislation, because that's all Congress does, is legislate. The only thing they should bring people in for is to pass legislation, is force in my book. And for those who disagree, we'll just have to agree to disagree.
This ambiguity raises concerns about selective enforcement against disfavored viewpoints, particularly pro-Palestinian advocacy. Legal scholars emphasize that the Supreme Court has repeatedly affirmed the right to protest in public spaces, even when disruptive. In Tinker v. Des Moines, 1969, the court ruled that students do not shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. By threatening funding cuts based on vague criteria, the administration risks coercing schools into suppressing protected speech to avoid.
They risk. This is AI, and I can tweak it to take out all of that hemming and hawing. Oh, they risk and they might. There is no might. They are. I'm going to show you MJ Truth Ultra had a post. Let's go into it and listen to Donald Trump himself here in a second. He's going to be speaking tonight to Congress. This is going to be very interesting. Protests lined up. Okay. We'll see what happens here with the protests and all the other different things. Dr. Michael Rectenwall is very good on this issue. I wasn't really harsh on him. I just said president wasn't the right role for him. So I'm never against the dude. Now that he's not running for president, I actually like following him a lot. He said, and because criticizing Israel is illegal on college campuses, all anti-Israel protests are illegal. American citizens will be expelled if they protest Israel's war crimes. Remember, Trump did the executive order in 2018 or 19. He said, Michael Rectenwall, I completely agree with this. This is pretty harsh. Things are escalating, so I'm going to escalate with them. I'm not going Hassan Piker, though, where he crossed the line. But maybe on another discussion, I'll talk about where I'm more aligned with Hassan Piker just in his approach of going after power. But he landed closer to the hole, but he went too far. He overshot it. But Michael Rectenwall says this is treasonous. And the part of Trump, this imbecile, Elise Stefanik, and the entire government. So I agree. Donald Trump should be impeached for violating the First Amendment. He's escalating, I'm escalating. I'm unhappy. MJ Truth Ultra says, unpopular opinion. Maybe this is why we should reconsider why Trump took a stance against anti-Semitism on college campuses. Because all those anti-Semitic protests were literally funded by George Soros, the Rockefellers, and Wall Street banker. Remember this? And then he talked about the copycat tents and all that. So let's take a look at the comment from Trump.
Now think of it, but he hasn't been heard from. He's the president. When you have a problem like that, you should go out and talk about it and talk to the people. But there's a big problem. There's a big fever in our country, and he's not talking. But if he did, it wouldn't matter. In fact, I think it would actually make it worse. Many of them aren't even students, and many of them come from. Now think of it, but he hasn't been heard from. He's the president. When you have a problem like that, you should.
So I misinterpreted this. Let me go back to MJ. That's a horrific tweet, I think. I thought he was on my side here, but let me see what he's saying here. I think he's saying that he thinks that people aren't looking at the fact that George Soros is funding these things. What does that have to do with anything? That's a terrible tweet. Do I follow? Oh, I think I used to follow him, and I don't anymore. That's a terrible tweet. I misinterpreted that. But he's talking about the protests there, which, yeah, I do agree that they were. So what? So So here's the argument that we're seeing here. So MJ Truth Ultra, the unpopular opinion. That's not an unpopular opinion. I don't know why he led with that. I think that's how he got me there. But what's happening here is people are trying to use excuses to defend. We all know it's all for Israel. That's what this is all about for MJ Truth Ultra as well. Talking about the copycat 10-cent cities. What does that have to do with the First Amendment? The argument that he's making is, yeah, let's trample the First Amendment because we have power, go authoritarian. But And I might even go that route if maybe we had someone like a young Nick who was a Christian futurist authoritarian, because I align with him very closely. But what if you don't? You wouldn't like that. So I'm not for authoritarianism, but nobody wants liberty. If you're going to do authority, I have to be aligned with you. I'm not aligned with this. So if you want to violate the First Amendment to go try to crush your enemies, I'm included as an enemy here. So I'm not going to support it. Not at all. Not even a little bit. Not even close.
Financial penalties, a form of unconstitutional jawboning previously challenged in cases like Bantam Books versus Sullivan, 1963. Under the spending clause, Congress may attach conditions to federal grants, but those conditions must be unambiguous and related to the federal interest in the program. Courts have struck down funding requirements that infringe on constitutional rights, as seen in NFIB versus Sebelius, 2012, where the Affordable Care Act's Medicaid expansion was deemed coercive. The Trump administration's threat to revoke funding from all federal programs, including research grants and student aid, exceeds typical conditional spending, potentially violating the Fourth Amendment's prohibition on unconstitutional conditions. For example, Columbia University faces a review of over $5 billion in grants, despite lacking evidence of systemic anti-Semitism. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE, argues that such broad-based penalties conflate isolated incidents with institutional policy, undermining academic autonomy. Targeting international students. Immigration status as a tool for suppression. Trump's executive order of January 29, 2025, authorizes the deportation of non-citizen students who participate in protests labeled as pro-jihadist or anti-Semitic. This directive leverages immigration law to penalize political speech, a tactic criticized as a circumvention of First Amendment protections. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, visa holders can be removed for criminal activity or threats to public safety, but the order expands this to include mere participation in demonstrations, regardless of conduct. Legal advocates note that international students face disproportionate risks as their immigration status hinges on administrative discretion. The Department of Homeland Security's memorandum, granting Title VIII enforcement authority to agencies like the DEA and U.S. Marshals, further escalates the potential for pretextual arrests. For example, a student arrested for trespassing during a protest could face deportation proceedings without the procedural safeguards afforded in criminal courts. The targeting of non-citizen students has already created a climate of fear on campuses. At Columbia University, where 25% of the student body is international, administrators report heightened anxiety among Middle Eastern and Muslim students. Faculty members argued that the policy stifles academic freedom, as scholars may avoid researching contentious topics like Palestinian rights to protect their students. This chilling effect extends to U.S. citizens who may self-censor to avoid.
And there you have it. Let me know what you think. This is blowing up, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
The next clip is ready below. Welcome to After Show Carnage.